You're sitting in a courtroom and they play a phone call. Just a few seconds. A voice, calm, almost tired, says, "I didn't mean to. I just needed it to stop." And that's it. That's the case. No eyewitness, no clear timeline, no murder weapon anyone can explain. Just this recording, and the way it makes your stomach drop. The prosecutor calls it a confession. The defense calls it a sentence ripped from a panic attack. The jury hears one thing. The defendant hears their own voice and swears that's not what they meant. Tonight, we're following a trial built on a single phone call and what happens when a recording becomes more trusted than reality. The defendant's name was Marcus Hale, 37 years old. A night shift paramedic from a mid-sized city you've probably driven through but never stopped in. Father of one. Coach of a weekend soccer team for kids who were mostly 7 and mostly terrible at it in the best way. On the night of October 4th, his neighbor, a man named Derek Fowler, was found unresponsive at the bottom of a staircase inside his own home. The cause of death was blunt force trauma to the skull. What followed was a 2-week investigation that stalled, circled, and ultimately collapsed onto one piece of evidence. A voicemail. Marcus had left it on his ex-wife's phone at 11:47 that night. She never answered. He spoke for 42 seconds, and somewhere in those 42 seconds, prosecutors believed he had confessed to killing Derek Fowler. Here it is. The whole thing. "Hey, it's me. I know you're probably not picking up, and I get it. Look, tonight got really bad. I didn't mean to. I just needed it to stop. Everything. I'm sorry. I'll explain when I can. Just don't worry about Callie. She's fine. I love you both. Okay, bye." The prosecution's transcript read, "I didn't mean to. I just needed it to stop." Those 2 sentences, lifted clean, played on a loop. The lead prosecutor, in her opening statement, described the call as, quote, "a man unburdening his conscience in real time." She told the jury that recordings do not exaggerate, do not misremember, do not have an agenda. She said, "You will hear his voice and you will know." And here is the terrifying thing about that moment. She wasn't entirely wrong. There is something about audio that bypasses our skepticism. When we hear a voice, we hear a person, we feel proximity, we feel truth. Researchers who study jury psychology have a name for it. They call it the objectivity illusion. The idea that recorded media is somehow more real than the humans who created it, more reliable than memory, more trustworthy than testimony. Jurors who watch body camera footage are more likely to convict. Jurors who hear audio recordings are more likely to believe the worst interpretation of ambiguous language. The recording doesn't lie, we tell ourselves. But we haven't asked the right question yet. The right question isn't whether the recording is accurate. It's whether we are. Let's go back to the night of October 4th, because the courtroom version of events was clean and the real version was not. Marcus Hale's shift had ended at 7 that evening. He had driven home, stopped for gas, argued briefly with the attendant about a faulty pump, and arrived at his duplex around 7:45. Derek Fowler lived in the other half of the same building. They shared a wall and, recently, a dispute over a parking space that had escalated beyond what parking space dispute should ever escalate to. 2 witnesses were called to describe Marcus's demeanor that evening. The first was a woman named Sandra, who lived across the street and had been walking her dog. She said Marcus had seemed, quote, agitated, pacing on the porch, talking on his phone. She said she remembered clearly because she had almost waved to him and then decided not to. She was certain of the time, around 8:30. The second witness was a man named Tevin, a friend of Marcus's, who had briefly stopped by that evening to return a borrowed toolbox. He said Marcus had seemed tired, not agitated, quiet. He said Marcus had barely said 10 words to him. He was also certain of the time, around 8:30, same window, same man, two entirely different people. This is memory, not malicious, not conspiratorial, just human. We do not record our experiences, we reconstruct them. Every time we access a memory, we are not replaying a file. We are rebuilding a story from fragments, filling in gaps with expectations, emotions, context. The neuroscience on this is settled. Memory is not storage. Memory is performance. And yet, we believe it. We believe ourselves completely when we say, "I'll never forget." Now listen to the call again. "Hey, it's me. I know you're probably not picking up, and I get it. I get it. Look, tonight got really bad. I didn't mean to. I just needed it to stop. Everything. I'm sorry. I'll explain when I can. Just don't worry about Callie. She's fine. I love you both. Okay. Bye." Did you notice the breath before "I just needed it to stop"? Did you notice that he said everything? What if the call is true and still misleading? Now we get into the part of the story that should alarm every person who has ever sent a voice message in a moment of distress. Transcripts. There were, at the time of trial, 3 different transcript versions of Marcus Hale's voicemail in circulation. The prosecution submitted one. The defense submitted another. A court-appointed transcriptionist produced a third, which split the difference in ways that satisfied no one. Transcripts feel like facts. They look like facts. They come in clean fonts with neat line breaks, and we treat them the way we treat a photograph, as though they are capturing something objective. They are not. Punctuation is interpretation. Paragraph breaks are editorial decisions. Where you place a period changes what a sentence means. Where you insert a dash changes what a speaker sounds like. Here is the prosecution's version. "I didn't mean to. I just needed it to stop." 2 sentences. Declarative, final. The grammar of a confession. Here is the defense's version. "I didn't mean to. I just needed it to stop." 1 fractured thought. 3 interruptions. A question mark at the end because the audio, if you listen closely, carries an upward inflection on the word stop, as though he is not stating a fact but searching for one. These are not trivial differences. These are the difference between guilt and despair. In court, the prosecutor played the call 3 times during closing arguments, each time louder. The third time with a graphic on the screen that showed only the words, "I just needed it to stop." No everything. No Callie. No I love you both. Just those 7 words, floating in white space as the room went very quiet. The defense attorney asked, during cross-examination, who had written the prosecution's transcript. The answer was not a certified transcriptionist. It was a paralegal who had been given the audio file and a deadline. The defense asked how many versions had existed before the official one was submitted. Objection sustained. There is a phrase for what the prosecution was doing, and it is not a crime, but it should feel like one. It's called certainty theater, the deliberate use of repetition, volume, and visual framing to make an ambiguous thing feel conclusive, to make a fragment feel complete. You play the call again, you slow it down, you add captions, you remove the context around it, you turn 42 seconds of a man's pain into a 7-word verdict, and the third time the jury hears it, they stop hearing the voice. They start hearing the crime. Now listen one more time, but this time, pay attention to something underneath the words. At the 11-second mark, there is a click. Audio forensics experts call this a discontinuity. It can mean many things: a brief interruption in cellular signal, a momentary glitch in the recording software, a pause that was edited out, or it could mean nothing at all. But here is what the defense's audio analyst found when she examined the file. Between seconds 9 and 11, there is approximately 1.8 seconds of audio that does not match the ambient noise profile of the rest of the recording. The background hum shifts, the room tone changes, then shifts back. And at the very edge of audibility, almost certainly unintelligible. There is what sounds like a word, or the end of a word, before Marcus says, "I just needed it to stop." The defense argued it could be a name. The prosecution argued it was meaningless distortion. The jury was not allowed to hear the isolated clip. But here is what no one argued about, because no one could. There was another call made from Marcus Hale's phone that night, 11 minutes before the voicemail. Same number, his ex-wife's phone. That call lasted 4 minutes and 12 seconds. There is no recording, because it connected, because she didn't answer the voicemail, but she answered that one. The call log existed, the content did not, and the prosecutor never introduced it. If the missing call exists, if those 4 minutes and 12 seconds contained what Marcus said they contained, then the voicemail means something completely different. He told his defense team that during that earlier call, he had been talking his daughter Callie through a panic attack over the phone. She was 11 and she was at a sleepover, and she had called him scared, overwhelmed, unable to breathe. He had coached her through it for 4 minutes, and when he left the voicemail 11 minutes later, he was talking about that, about his fear, about the helplessness of hearing your child in distress through a phone speaker and not being able to reach her. "I didn't mean to scare her. I just needed it to stop everything she was feeling." That is what he said the voicemail meant. The jury never heard that full sentence spoken in that full context, because the only record of the 4-minute call was the log, and logs don't speak. There is a phenomenon that psychologists call memory reconsolidation. It means that every time you access a memory, you don't just retrieve it, you rewrite it, slightly, subtly. And when you store it again, you store the updated version, not the original. Which means that after the voicemail was played in a courtroom, repeatedly, loudly, with captions, everyone who knew Marcus Hale began, without knowing it, to remember him differently. His sister, who had spoken to him hundreds of times in states of exhaustion and distress, started to hear something in his voice she hadn't heard before. His old partner from work began replaying conversations, looking for signs. His ex-wife, who had not believed for a single moment that he could have done this, found herself lying awake, listening to the call on his phone, asking a question she had never expected to ask. This is not weakness. This is not betrayal. This is what recordings do to us. They replace the person with a version of the person. They make that version permanent, and once the version exists, the original starts to fade. Now imagine you are Marcus Hale. Imagine sitting in a courtroom and hearing your own voice played back to you, not in the context in which you spoke, not surrounded by the fear and the tiredness and the love that produced those words, just the words, floating, accusatory, certain. Imagine knowing that everyone in that room is constructing a story about who you are, from the inside out, based on 42 seconds you spent trying to reassure someone you loved. Observers in the courtroom that day said Marcus sat very still during the playback. He did not cry. He did not react in the ways we are trained to expect people to react. He stared at his hands. His jaw was tight. And when the audio ended and the room shifted its attention back to him, something in his face looked not guilty, not defiant, but lost, like a man who had just discovered that language could be turned into a cage. His attorney described it this way afterward. He kept saying, "That's my voice, that's my voice, I know that's my voice, but that's not me." The prosecution's closing argument lasted 40 minutes. It ended with this. "A recording is a fact. You heard it. You all heard it. The defendant, in his own words, told you what he did." The defense's closing argument lasted 55 minutes. It ended with this. "A recording is a fragment, and this fragment was handed to you without the page it came from, without the chapter, without the book. You have been asked to read one sentence and summarize a man's entire life. We are asking you not to. Play the call one last time. No transcript this time. No captions, no prosecutor's framing, no defense attorney's framing. just the audio, the way it sounded before anyone told you what to hear. Hey, it's me. I know you're probably not picking up, and I get it. Look, tonight got really bad. I didn't mean to. I just needed it to stop. Everything. I'm sorry. I'll explain when I can. Just don't worry about Callie. She's fine. I love you both. Okay. Bye. What do you hear? The jury deliberated for 9 hours over 2 days. On the morning of the third day, they returned a verdict of guilty on the charge of voluntary manslaughter. Marcus Hale was sentenced to 12 years. He would be eligible for parole in 8. His daughter Callie was 11 years old when they took him away. She would be 19 before he had a real chance of coming home. His ex-wife did not speak to the press. She sat in the back of the courtroom and held the hand of her sister and did not look at the jury when they read the verdict. His defense team filed an appeal within 60 days, citing prosecutorial misconduct for the failure to introduce the prior call log and newly submitted analysis of the audio discontinuity. 7 months after the verdict, a researcher at a university audio forensics lab published an independent analysis of the recording. She found 3 anomalies she could not explain within the bounds of standard cellular transmission. She was careful in her language. She said only that the recording warranted further examination. She did not say it had been altered. She did not say it was authentic. She said, more questions. And here is where the case sits right now. Not resolved, not exonerated, not condemned, just open, like a file left on a desk that no one quite has the courage to close. The metadata from the voicemail server was subpoenaed 8 months into the appeal process. The timestamp embedded in the audio file did not match the timestamp on the cellular carrier's call log. The difference was 11 seconds. 11 seconds. It may be a server sync error. It happens. Servers disagree about what time it is all the time, and we have built a world that trusts the one with the loudest voice, or it may be something else. The appeal is ongoing. Marcus Hale maintains that he did not kill Derek Fowler. He maintains that when he said, "I just needed it to stop," he was talking about his daughter's panic attack. He has said this consistently, in every interview, in every legal filing, in every conversation with his attorneys, for 3 years. Derek Fowler's family maintains that justice was served. They have not commented on the appeal. And somewhere in a courtroom database, a 42-second audio file sits as evidence, certain, unchanged, permanent, while the world around it continues to shift. When recordings replace reality, we stop asking human questions. We stop asking, what was he feeling? What did he mean? What came before? What came after? We start asking only, what did he say? And once we have the words, we believe we have the truth. But words are not truth. Words are attempts, flailing, imperfect attempts to translate the inside of one mind to the outside of another. And we have built a legal system, a civilization, on the premise that we can capture those attempts in a file and play them back forever and still know what they meant. We cannot always. We are fooling ourselves when we pretend otherwise. The scariest part isn't that a recording can be wrong. It's that a recording can be right and still destroy the truth. Because are we not all, every one of us, one clipped sentence away from being permanently misunderstood? Have you never said something in exhaustion that sounded like something else? Have you never left a message you could not take back, in words that only made sense inside your own head? Marcus Hale made a phone call. He said, "I love you both," at the end of it. No transcript included that part. If this one stayed with you, leave a comment. Tell me what the words in the recording meant to you, because the answer might be different for every single one of us, and that is exactly the problem.